Hey everyone, good evening. Welcome to day one of our JavaScript class. So we'll be looking at JavaScript from this week, and we're going to be doing little introductory text, or like a very little brief introduction to programming in general before we move to using JavaScript on the web and how to use JavaScript programming language. So without further ado, I'm just going to go into the material I have for today. Can you mute your mic? Okay, so I'm just going to go to what we have today, right? So I am going to assume, or I'm not going to assume everyone here has little programming language and programming knowledge, right? So I'm going to explain basically from like very scratch and hope we all go together, right? So I'm going to start with a little introduction to programming before we go to JavaScript, right? So prior to now, if you attended our HTML classes or if you were involved in our HTML and CSS with Git, you might have done little programming to an extent, right? Because HTML and how the browser reads HTML is a little bit of programming, but that is just scripting part. Also, HTML is not a full programming language, so we're going to see all that in JavaScript, right? So basically, programming is the act of instructing computers to carry out tasks, often referred to as coding, right? So again, I'm just going to be switching between my little PDF file and my code editor like we normally do, right? So just give me 1 minute. Let me just populate this file with little codes, yeah? I'm going to use HTML for our examples before we go to JavaScript, right? So basically, right, the term programming means just instructing the computer to carry out tasks, like often referred to as coding, right? So step-by-step instructions like given to the computer, right? So if maybe you have a full HTML project, I'm using HTML as an example now. Maybe when we get to JavaScript, you're going to see different statements. Maybe there's a H1, and stuff like that continuously, right? So these are just sets of instructions for the browser. I already showed us how the browser reads the index file and displays it on the web page, right? So for example, this HTML file is a set of instructions for the browser to display this page, right? So the browser knows how to display P tags and H1 tags and maybe links, and yeah, so links are clickable, stuff like that. So programming is the act of instructing computers to carry out tasks, right? So often referred to as coding. So a computer program is a sequence of instructions that the computer executes, right? So when we start creating JavaScript files, you're going to see that the reason why we put codes in files, it's because one file, or maybe if a file can contain a program, right? So whatever instructions you lay out or kind of give the computer to execute from a file is called a program. For example, this file, if it's a JavaScript file or any programming language file, we can term it as a program, right? But I'm just using an index file as example in our case. So basically, what you should just know is programming is the act of instructing computers to carry out tasks. Then a program is a sequence of instructions. Just outline this P, outline step by step, most times line by line instructions. When we get to full-fledged JavaScript, we're going to see all those, right? We give the computer instructions in sequence. So the computer executes those instructions. So I'm just going to touch on why programming languages, right? Why there are different programming languages, or why we use programming languages to talk to computers. So if you don't know, like machines have their natural language like humans do, right? We communicate with English language and Chinese and other language, right? So computers do not understand the human language, right? So the natural language of the computer is binary, right? So ones and zeros. So if you've maybe not come across it, or maybe you don't fully have idea about it, what computers understand, maybe if you've seen movies or technical document, what computers understand are ones and zeros, just 111, like this, how they represent vocabulary, the way we have our alphabet, right? So the alphabets of the computer are just ones and zeros all through. Whatever you see here on the screen, whatever I see on the screen or the terminal or the browser are all represented as ones and zeros, but the computers convert it for us to read in our own language. But I won't be going into that, right? I'm just going to touch a little bit on it, right? So that's the natural language of electronic equipment, right? It would be hectic for us as humans to communicate with computer in binary, right? So one of the quick reason, one of the why of programming language, right? So programming languages are a way to maybe give instructions to the computer in a way the computer will understand, right? I'm going to get to how they are converted to binary, but whatever we write here, be it HTML, JavaScript, or Apex, is always converted to computer language, to binary, which is computer language, right? So what you should just know, computer doesn't understand our English language. They understand binary, ones and zeros, and that is their natural language. So programming languages, there are different programming languages, mind you. Programming languages helps us to write instructions that can be converted to binary. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. Then, okay, so to communicate with machines who speak binary, we do so in a language that is closer to our own natural language, right? Programming languages are close to our natural language, but they are more structured and must be thoroughly learned, right? So programming languages are close to our natural language, right? So for example, this is a little bit cryptic, but if you know HTML and maybe you've learned tags, you know that this is paragraph, this is a header, right? And these are just self-defined, and we know what this means. So in a nutshell, we know what we want the computer to do by naming tags, and compilers are going to compile this to binary and tell the computer exactly what to do. I'm going to get to compilers in a bit. I'm just trying to race through this. So the computer needs a way to understand our human language. So to do this, we need a translator, right? Translators have the responsibility of converting source code to machine language. So I'm just going to use an image to demonstrate all this stuff I've been talking about, right? So basically, in a nutshell, this is how programming and programming languages work. We write a program, most times called source code or application. So for example, this file is a source code. Let me go back to my P's and H1, right? So this file is a source code. And remember I said computers don't understand alphabets and our symbols, right? So there are softwares called translators or compilers. Okay, yeah. So there are translators, but there are different kind of translators, compilers, and all. So what they help to do, right? We're not going to be doing all this. We're not going to be the ones to compile. It's automatically done, right? So I'm just trying to lay a basic foundation so you could understand programming beyond JavaScript, because we're going to be focusing on JavaScript this month. So we write code, or our source code, our application, which is what we have here. Then before it's passed on to the computer, there is a middleman called maybe the compiler or the translator that converts everything here, right? So you don't have to know the technicalities of how it's done or what is done, right? So the compiler knows how to convert or knows what A represents in binary. So maybe in your spare time, you can go and check it. All our alphabet has binary representations, right? So the compiler knows how to convert H to maybe its binary reference in bits, right? So we're not going to be doing all those. The translator will do that for us and converts it to ones and zeros for the computer to run. So in a nutshell, why we have programming languages, right, is to write instructions that the computer will execute, but there's a middleman, or there's always a compiler that converts our English language written programs to computer code. So the computer can always execute our code. So what you should know, any program you write is not always passed down to the computer like this. So maybe when we get to other programming languages, there are different syntax. So you see there are different syntax. So it's not always passed to the computer like this. It's always compiled or converted to binary and passed down to the computer to be executed. So the only thing the computer understands is binary. Okay. So so basically this is just like a summary of all what I've said, right? So before we jump into JavaScript, and maybe you start thinking JavaScript is the only programming language, or JavaScript is programming, right? So this is just like a brief rundown of what programming is, how programming works, right? So programming is is an act of instructing computers to carry out tasks, but we do so, we instruct or we command the computers to do stuff by writing, or by writing them as by writing them in programming languages, right? There are different programming languages, right? There's JavaScript, there's Java, there's Python, there's Apex, and so on and so forth, right? So, but what you should know is we're going to be looking at JavaScript, but you can learn other. We're going to definitely learn other programming languages, but in a nutshell, again, programming is an act of instructing the computer to carry out instructions, right? So we can write our program. Maybe I think our assignment this time will be building some little programs, right? So you write a program, you don't need to worry about the compiler. You just need to know your codes are always compiled to machine language. Okay. So I listed out, so I was supposed to list out different programming languages, right? So, but they are basically different programming languages. I don't want to go into all those and what they do, but we are going to be looking at JavaScript, because JavaScript is the programming language for the web, right? So, and you can also use JavaScript to build other amazing software. But if you want to work on the web or do anything that has to do with the web, you need to learn JavaScript, right? So I am just going to take a pause before I go into JavaScript and how to use JavaScript in the browser, and see if anyone has any questions regarding this. But before I do that, just remember, this is just like an overview, right? If I try to go deep into any of the bullet points I've listed here, it might take a whole moment, because this is computer science stuff, right? So this is just basic understanding, so you understand JavaScript and all we want to do with programming. So if you have maybe any little question about the whole programming and instructing computer stuff before we go into JavaScript, you can just raise your hand so we can just take those questions. Okay, hi, Osman.
Hi, Samin. How are you?
I'm fine.
So you said there are different types of programming languages. For example, the JavaScript is for the web. The Java itself, what is it for?
So, okay. I said JavaScript, it's like the primary language for the web, right? So Java can be used to build other applications, right? But Java can still be used on the web, but creating back-end services, right? So you can use Java to create database applications or back-end applications or servers and all other stuff, right? But there are some frameworks the way we had, okay, yeah, it's good. I already explained frameworks like Bootstrap for CSS, right? There are some Java frameworks that can enable you create websites with Java. Same with Python. Python is also a scripting and programming language, right? It's used to build applications. Python is used for machine learning and data science, but it can also build websites through frameworks, right? Yeah, so they all are programming language. They all have their strengths. They all have where they are being used, but they can also be used on the web. But the primary language for the web browser is JavaScript. Sometimes the framework, or some of the frameworks that maybe Python uses, let me just see if I can remember some of them, Flask and Django, they use JavaScript under the hood, right? So what you should know is your web browser, in fact, your web browser it's the engine that runs the web browser is the JavaScript engine, but I don't want to go into that. So JavaScript is like the primary language for the web browsers. Other ones can build web applications, but they are mostly server-side and other scripting softwares, or other scripting languages for other softwares.
So do they use the same character encoding system?
By character, no, they have different syntax. They all have their syntax. That's why they are different programming languages.
Now, I'm not talking about the syntax. I'm talking about the character encoding system, or is it language? Like, do they use the same thing? Because, like you said the JavaScript is mainly used for web and the likes. So I'm wondering if the likes of Python, Apex, if they run on the same character.
Yeah, so if I get you, they all have, like, each of them have their engines, right? So the engine that kind of runs JavaScript, there are different engines, right? There's V8, I think, was created by Google. So all the individual engine kind of knows how to convert it to binary code, right? So Python should have its engine that converts it to binary code. So if that's what you're asking, they always get converted to the same like to the same binary, or I don't know how to explain it, but they all have different engine that converts them and communicates with the computer. So I know there are three. I know I can list the three engines that convert JavaScript, but I don't have for Java, Python, and other ones off the top of my head.
All right, thank you. That'll be all for now.
Yeah, cool. So I think every other person is good. So we're just going to jump into JavaScript and how to use JavaScript with HTML and CSS. Okay, so I'm going to go to this resource, right? So we've been working with W3 Schools, right? Because it has easy to use bit by bit tutorials on each topic, right? And I think Babatope shared this earlier in the class. So if you've gone through this, I think you might find what we're going to do here a little bit easy. So but I'll just try to go through it, right? Yeah, so first of all, how to run JavaScript code, or how to embed, or how to connect JavaScript code to your HTML or your website, right? So if you can remember previously, when we were working on CSS, we had to come and link our CSS at the top of the page, or maybe via inline. Right, so there are three ways to import CSS, the link tag, inline CSS, and header CSS, right? So same goes with JavaScript, right? If you just build your website, or maybe have your website project folder, if I create a JavaScript file, and okay, the extension for JavaScript files is .js, right? So previously we had, let me create a style sheet. Previously we had a CSS file with .css extension, HTML with .html extension. If you want to write JavaScript code, it has to have a .js extension, right? So let's say you have a project and you write maybe your JavaScript codes in here. I'm going to explain what this is subsequently. If you load this page, it's not going to automatically like kind of work, whatever you wrote, it's not going to automatically work. You need to connect it the same way we've been connecting CSS to the page. Okay. And there are, I think, 2 ways or 3 ways to connect JavaScript to the page that the browser provides. So in HTML, JavaScript code is inserted between the script tag, so the beginning script opening tag and the closing script tag, right? So if I go back to my code in my head section of my HTML document and write a script tag opening and closing, I can write JavaScript in here, okay? Same with what we had when we had style sheet. We had the internal style sheet where we could do style opening and closing, right? So if you want to write JavaScript, you can embed your JavaScript in your HTML by calling script tag. So the same way we have paragraph tags, heading tags, style tags, JavaScript has its own tag called the script. So if you invoke the script tag, you can write JavaScript in here and your VS Code will even understand it, right? Let me see. Your VS Code will even understand it, right? So this is one of the ways to write JavaScript in your HTML. So we're going to get to variables then. So you can either put the script tag in the head or the body tag, okay? So I just give an example. Okay, let me just put an alert here so we know this works, right? So if I put this is the JavaScript function, we're going to get to it and go live, right? So I did something for my JavaScript code. It's called an alert. I'm going to show you how to do this. So it means my JavaScript works, right? So we can embed our JavaScript both in the head or the body tag, right? So I can put this here and it works, but if I cut this and put it in our body tag, it's still going to work, right? So if I load it, I'm still going to see my alert high, okay? Then the last way to add JavaScript to a page, maybe if the same way with CSS, if the JavaScript file or your program is too long, you can use an external JavaScript. Okay, just the same way we have our external CSS, we can create an external JavaScript and import it, right? So if I go here, clear this now, and put in my alert high in our external JavaScript, then use the syntax to import, what's it called? The JavaScript in our index.html. So I'm just going to go to my body tag. I can do this anywhere and just type in script type Java and caps lock. This is not needed, so let me not complicate things. Script source, resource. Yeah. So I'm just going to put in the name of my JavaScript file, which is script.js, right? If I save this and go to my web browser and reload, okay, let me just change this to external JS and save. I'm going to see my JavaScript has been connected, right? So the 3 ways or the 2 ways to kind of connect JavaScript to your HTML is you either write the opening and the closing script tag, or you call a script as a link with a source. Remember, if you're importing CSS, you can do, let me just put in the CSS link CSS. So you see link with a href, right? With the location of the CSS file. You can also do the same for JavaScript, but it has to be the script tag with a source. So again, our whole file system works same with the source, right? For that. So if I create a folder called programs and move my script tag inside, the same way we had our referencing, I'll still have to reference, let me see, programs, then scripts.js, right? So it's still our linking principle with the source and href tag, right? So anywhere you have the source and href, you just have to put in the location. So it mustn't be like on the root folder, right? So I've just gone through how you can import JavaScript into your program. So let's just kind of go into JavaScript syntax and see how we can use JavaScript on our web pages, right? Okay. Okay, so I'll just go to JavaScript syntax. So that's because that's what we want to learn first. So the same way, just give me a moment. Okay, so the same way we had our HTML syntax. This is I guess everyone here attended our HTML. This is the HTML syntax. We have the HTML head body, and we had for CSS. So if you can remember, this is CSS syntax, right? Selector, open curly braces, then command and value, right? Color red. So this is the CSS syntax, right? So that is the same way JavaScript has its own syntax, but it's a little bit more complex than what we did in HTML and CSS, right? So JavaScript syntax is the set of rules, how JavaScript programs are constructed, right? So so in JavaScript, you write programs. If you remember, the definition of programming is step-by-step instructions, right? So in most programming languages, right, it's you write programs line by line, right? So I can do let date equals a date, and I put a semicolon, and I go down, I put maybe another command. I'm going to explain what all this means in a while. Equals maybe, I'll just put a string, let me put a number, and I'll end with a semicolon, right? So how JavaScript works, right? JavaScript works by statement. So this is a statement, right? It goes line by line, and each line has to be ended. Each line ends with a semicolon. Okay, so let me just see. Okay, before I jump to data types, right? So there are just two basic things you need to understand before I go into data types and explain how to declare variables, right? So in JavaScript, we have keywords. We have JavaScript keywords. Everything must be preceded with a keyword, right? So same way we had in our HTML, if you want to maybe give the browser an instruction to display text, you have to put a HTML tag. So you need to put everything in a HTML tag in HTML before it's displayed appropriately, right? But in JavaScript, we call them keywords. So if I just go to keywords, right? So in JavaScript keywords are used to identify actions to be performed, right? So there are different types of keywords in JavaScript, right? There's the let keyword, there's const, there's var. I'm going to explain them in a bit. There's var, there's let, and const. So basically, you're going to be using these three keywords most of the time, right? So when we get to variables, functions, and objects, practically anything you're going to declare in JavaScript, you have to proceed with keywords. So I'm just going to go to data types. So I'll come back to syntax and statement. Let me just go to data types. So I'll explain some things and come back to syntax, right? So I'm going to go to JavaScript data types. Okay, so basically the first thing you need to know, understand in JavaScript or maybe any other programming languages is you always have to declare variables, right? So the first thing you need to learn is how to declare variable. The basic stuff is how to declare variables, right? So variables are just containers to store data in programming, right? So variables are containers for storing data or data values, right? So I'm just going to give an example, right? The keyword for creating a variable, right, is let, or let me use var. There are three keywords for creating a variable, right? So let me use var, my name equals Samuel, okay? I'm going to explain why I put this in quotes, and I'm going to explain the syntax, right? So this is a JavaScript statement, and this is a way to declare a variable, right? So the keyword to declare a variable in JavaScript is var. We can also use let or const, but I'm going to get to that, but let me just use var. So variables in JavaScript are just a way to store data values for later use. Or maybe when we write huge programs, you're going to see, once I declare a variable like this, var, my name is Sammy, I can use Sammy anywhere in my code later, even if my code gets to 1,000 lines, and it's just going to store the value Sammy in this container, right? So basically, what variables does, it just stores a reference of a value in a container in memory, right? So if I do this and save and reload my page, I alerted the variable my name, but the value was Sammy. Okay, so basically, you're going to be writing a whole lot of variables in maybe in your program. You're going to be creating numbers, objects, and all. So this is how to declare a variable, right? And the syntax is the keyword. The keyword is var, or there are 3 keywords to declare a variable, right? You can use either var, let, or const, right? The keyword, the variable name, and the value. Okay, we're going to get to operators, and you see why this equals to is not what you think it is, right? So I'm just going to go back to our content. So like these are just examples, right? Var x equals 5, var y equals 6, var z equals x plus y. You can also do number computations, right? So in these examples, I've declared with the let keyword. So again, you can use either var, let, or const to declare variables. I'm going to explain the difference later. But basically, what you need to know is in writing all your programs, you're going to declare a whole lot of variables. And this is a way, or this is the syntax to declare variables, right? I wanted to show you something, right? So initially, when I wrote my name, I put it in strings, right? But if I'm writing numbers, I can write numbers outrightly, right? So in programming, virtually all programming languages, right? They are what we call data types, right? So there are strings, there are numbers, and other type of data types, right? Every other thing every other data type that is not a keyword has to be in quotes, but numbers can be written outrightly. We're going to get to that in a bit, but basically, variables are used to store data we're going to use later in our programs, and you declare variables in JavaScript with the let, var, and const. This is going to be definitely different in other programming languages, right? That's why this is the JavaScript syntax. So this just shows us when to use var and let, right? Okay, when to use var, always declare JavaScript variables with the var, let, or const. The var keyword is used in all JavaScript code. So these are just versions, and like how I think in HTML, someone asked why we were using some stuff, and I just explained that it's yeah. So someone was asking the difference between section and div, right? So var was the syntax used to declare variables in the early versions of JavaScript, right? So when like they always release updates and they released let and const. There are still other differences between them, but I won't want to go into them to kind of create confusion. But the 3 ways you can use to create variables in JavaScript is let, var, and const. And 3 of them are going to create your variable for you. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll past the difference between const and var. Okay. So all JavaScript variables must be identified with unique names, right? So if you look at this syntax, this is the keyword, this is the identifier, and this is the value. The unique names are called identifiers, right? Identifiers can be short names like X and Y, or more descriptive names, age, sum, total volume, and so on and so that. So the general rules for constructing variable names are, okay, so names can contain, I can create my variable with anything, right? I can use cohorts _3, or I can use black force $, blah, 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 whatever I want to save my variable name with, depending on what's maybe my program or my convention, right? But you cannot start a variable name with a number. It's going to throw an error. right? You cannot start a variable name with a number. So this just lists out conventions that you can use to create a variable name. Names must begin with a letter, right? So some programming languages can, I can still use an underscore, right? But convention says names must begin with a letter. Names can also begin with a $sign, an underscore, correct? But we will not use this. So this is just convention. But what you should pick out from here, right, is declaring variables. You have the keyword, the identifier, and the value. And you can play around with how you write the identifier, but you cannot start with number. Or you can start with a text and include numbers or symbols in between them. Okay? So reserved keywords like JavaScript keywords cannot be used as names. So again, there are a couple of keywords in JavaScript, or the JavaScript program uses. You cannot use them as, you cannot use them as variable names. So for example, if I want to say, let var is a JavaScript keyword, let var equals to 2, it's going to throw an error. Okay, if I want to say, let equals to 2, it's going to throw an error. So there are some keywords that the program or JavaScript uses internally that you cannot use in your program, right? So I can list a few off the top of my head: function, object, let const var, array. I think, okay, array is not a keyword, and number, and so forth, so on and so forth, right? But once you maybe start using those keywords, you remember them, right? So variable names can be text with numbers, but you cannot start them with numbers. So I'm just going to get to operators, right? So maybe previously, maybe in HTML or something else, you know the equal sign as equating, right? But in JavaScript or virtually every programming language, the equal sign is called an assignment operator, right? So if I do, let's program equals, let me see, black force. So if I do this in a programming language, right, what I'm just doing is assign this value. It's called an assignment operator, right? Assign this value to this identifier. I am not kind of equating them, right? So I'm just saying, let's program equal black force, right? So assign this value, whatever is going to be here, be it a number, digit, to this value or this program variable or this program identifier, right? So this is different from algebra. The following does not make sense in algebra, right? So x equals x plus 5. In JavaScript, however, it makes perfect sense. It assigns the value of x plus 5 to x. So in JavaScript, the equal sign is an assignment operator, not an equating or equational operator, right? So the equal to operator is written like this in JavaScript. So maybe later when we get to that, if you want to, let's say, maybe if you've done maybe Salesforce formula, you maybe want to say something is equals to something, right? If you want to do that in JavaScript, you're going to say 3, or maybe if 3 equal to 3. So this is how you write equating. This is how you write, this is how you use equal to in JavaScript, right? So the equal sign, single equal sign, is an assignment operator, while the double, if you want to do maybe how you have equals to in algebra, you're going to have to double it. But we're going to get to operators, right? Then data types, what I wanted to talk about. So there are different data types in JavaScript or in all programming languages, right? So data types are just types of data, right? So for this language to work, you have to give, or you have to explain, like, there are different data types that works with programming language, right? There are dates, there's a date, it's already colored, there are string, there's a string, there's number, yes. I think there are objects, there's null, there's undefined, and Boolean. I'm going to explain all of them individually and what they use. I think big int, symbol. Yeah, so data types are just types of data, right? So this kind of helps the computer understand what type of data you're dealing with, right? So if I do, let's do just use date of DOB as date of death equals, I can say maybe, let me just type in what I've not talked about. And just put new date, right? So this is just going to maybe generate a date for me. So data types are just a way to kind of identify or tell the computer, like, these are different types of data, right? The most common data type you're going to be using are strings, right? So date of birth can be 45th of December, right? So these are strings. Numbers are written without quotes. Objects are maybe functions or maybe dictionaries. We'll get to that. Null, undefined. Boolean, it's true or false. So these are just different data types, and we're going to see basic use of them when we start writing like programs that make sense, right? But for now, I'm just going to start with talking about strings. So JavaScript data types can hold numbers like 100 and text values like John Doe, right? So if you can see, the number is just without quotes, and the text values John Doe is in strings, right? So if you're writing a string data type, or anything that is displayed on this, like any string, has to be in double quotes. In programming, text values are called strings. JavaScript can handle many types of data, but for now, just think of numbers and strings, right? So we're mainly going to be working with strings, numbers, and maybe Booleans a lot, right? Then we're going to learn other ones later on, right? So if you put a number in quotes, it will be treated as a text string. Let me use all this as an example now. I'm just going to copy all this they tried and paste it in my code. So const pi, so this is like, for example, a mathematics application, const pi equal to 3.41. Let person equals John Doe. Let answer equals yes, I am, right? So this variable, this is a variable, right? This variable, it's the data type of this variable is number. The data type of this person variable is a string. So as this one. So I'm just going to use a method I've not talked about to show you something, right? So if I do alert type of pi, I'll go to my browser, and if you see, it's going to show number, right? So I'm just trying to kind of pull out the data type of this variable. We've not talked about type of, but basically what I'm trying to explain is there are different data types we use to communicate to the computer, right? The major two we are going to be working with most of the time are numbers and text. So anything you put in between quotes, it can be single quotes or double quotes, right? Any text you put in between quotes are strings. But if you put, any number, like numbers are not written with string, but you cannot write a text without a quote. It's going to throw an error, right? I cannot do John Doe. It's already giving me an error, and nothing is going to happen. So texts are always in strings, but you can write numbers outrightly without strings. But if you put a number in a string, it becomes a text or it becomes a string. Okay, so that's strings data type, right? I already talked about declaring a JavaScript variable, right? So you use the var or the let. Let me just see. So these are just kind of summary of the different statements I talked about. Okay. So again, this is the JavaScript statement, like I've pointed out. So JavaScript statements are composed of values, operators, expression, keywords, and comments, right? So this is the keyword, this is the identifier, and this is the value, right? I am going to get into the web API, how to use change HTML soon. I just want to major on statements and variables, right? So semicolon separates JavaScript statements. Like I said, a program, it's a step-by-step instruction, right? So semicolons just kind of separate how we had opening and closing tags, separating HTML commands, right? Same way, semicolons indicates the end of a line. In some programming language, this is like heavily required, but JavaScript, again, as with everything on the web, is a bit messy, right? I can take this off and my code will still run. But By convention, semicolons just indicates the end of a line or a command or a statement rather. Okay. And I can put different statements on the same line once I have a semicolon. So these are just all added stuff that you can play around with. Okay. Again, just like with HTML, computer doesn't understand white space, right? So let person equals like this and like this, sorry, it's still the same thing as like this. So it just only read one space, right? So we learned that in HTML. Okay, so this was what I was looking for, right? So these are all the JavaScript keywords, right? So JavaScript statements often start with a keyword to identify the JavaScript action to be performed, right? So if you want to do anything in JavaScript, you have to precede it with one of all these keywords, right? So we've seen var for variables, let for variables, then const for variables, right? There are others we're going to get to. If you've done like maybe formula fields in your Salesforce module, you should understand if. So there's an if statement, right? That is declared like this. Okay. There's a switch for function and so on and so forth, right? So every line or every statement you're going to write in JavaScript has to be preceded by any of these keywords. So we're going to, before we maybe get into if, switch, or function, we're going to use var, let, and const a whole lot, okay? So I'm just going to go to data types fully, variables, let. So let me just talk about variables, right? Let me just talk about let and const. Before I even go to operators, I'm going to take questions if anyone has questions, but I just want to talk about how to create variables and how to redeclare variables, right? So I'm just going to clear all this stuff, right? So basically what you should know, right? All programs or any program you're going to be working with will have numerous variables, right? So way to declare a variable in JavaScript, right? It's to use the keyword either let, var, or const, right? So I'm just going to talk about const and let. So to declare a variable, you're going to write the keyword again, same as with how we did in the HTML. You're going to have to learn all the keywords, right? But I think JavaScript keywords are lesser than HTML tags. So let, the identifier, and the value, okay? So the let keyword was introduced in 2015. Like I said, it's just versioning stuff, right? So var was used like earlier on. Then when they released an upgrade, they changed the keyword to let, right? So variables defined with let cannot be redeclared, right? Variables defined with let must be declared before use. Variable defined with let have block scope, right? So these are just all what the var keyword allows. I'm just going to show you variable defined with let cannot be redeclared. So if I do let user equals Sammy, I cannot come down here and do let user equals Ngito, right? So this is already throwing an error because I've already used the keyword or the identifier user. I cannot redeclare it. So those are just kind of conventional tips and tricks of what the let keyword does. So let cannot be redeclared. I cannot do let x equals John Doe and let x equals 0 to just throw a syntax error. But with var, I can. So if I do var user equals Sammy, then var user again equals 0, it's going to work. So I don't even need to test this on my browser. My code editor is not showing any error. So these are just kind of like conventions and stuff you just need to know. But basically what I want everyone to get is how to use and declare variables. I am going to get to how to output all this on the web page, right? So the way I was outputting it was using alert, right? I'm going to get to how to output it in your HTML code, okay? Block scope, I don't want to talk about block scope right now. let hoisting. I don't want to talk about hoisting right now. I just want like basic variable declaration to be understood. So I'll just go to const. So the const was also introduced in 2015. The same thing, const cannot be really clear. So the difference between const and let, right? So const is let, I can declare let user equals Sammy and come down here and say user is equal to, let's say, Omo, right? And this is going to work, right? If I display user in my web page, we're going to see that user is now Omo, even if I initially initialized it as Sammy. But the difference between let and const, right? If I use const to declare a variable, it's going to be the same for the entire life cycle of this app, right? I cannot change. Let me see. It's throwing an error. That's why it's not showing anything. Yeah, so assignment to constant variable, right? So it's already throwing an error, so it's not showing anything. So if you use const, the difference between const and let is that const is permanent. This const means constant. It's just a short form, right? So const means constant, right? So if I declare const variable equals Sammy, even if this code gets 1 million lines of code, or as long as this program exists, I cannot change this variable or this identifier. So we'll see the use of this later, right? So basically, right, you're going to be using variables a whole lot, right? And you just need to understand how to create the keywords to create and assign variables, right? So const, the keyword is let var or const. You give an identifier that shouldn't start with a number, then you're going to give a value. I'm going to go how to output this on the HTML page next, but I just want to talk about operators before I open up for questions. Const object, okay, I don't want to talk about that now. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly talk about operators, right? So in JavaScript, assign values to variables and add them together, right? So same with other stuff, we can do computation, right? Just give me 1 minute. If you look at what I did, let me change this to let, right? In algebra, in normal sense, this equal sign is supposed to mean like equation, right? But in JavaScript, equal to means assignment, right? So it means take whatever is on the right side and assign it to this value. I can do let my phone number equals, I can just write in my phone number here, right? So what it just means is take this value and assign it to this variable. It doesn't mean equal, like it doesn't mean equating. This is not an equating operator in JavaScript or in programming in general. So it means this is an assignment operator. There are different kinds of operator, right? So the equal sign is called an assignment operator, and it assigns a value to a variable. So this is a better way to put it, right? It assigns a value to a variable. So the addition operator adds numbers. So every other operator or every other algebra operator works the same way. The addition operator adds numbers, right? So if I come here and do alert 2 plus 2, here's my plus on my keyboard, 2 plus 2 is going to compute it and give me the result, right? So it says 4. So the addition operator still does the same thing. Multiplication operator still does the same thing, but you can still use them in variables. So these are just a list of all the variables in JavaScript before I get to assignment operators. So you can use plus, minus, multiplied by, times, and divided by. So, and you can also use them in assigning variables, right? So if I copy this, paste, so it says let x equals y. So sorry, let x equals 5, right? Let y equals 2. I can just do, instead of doing let z equals 5 plus 2, I can do let z equals x times y. So what JavaScript is going to do is going to take the value of x and the value of y and multiply them together, right? So this just shows you can do mathematical like operations and concatenations, right? Again, we're going to get to all those. It's 5 times 2, 4. No, I don't think so. 5 to 5 times 2 should be 10. Yeah, so I was loading the old version. So this is 10. So basically, right, you declare variables with lets and const, and variables are containers to storing data. If this doesn't make sense yet, when we start maybe by connecting all the dots, we're going to see how variables are used and how you're going to play variables, right? So let me just pause here and take questions. If you don't understand anything, you can just ask any question. Omo?
Hi, Sammy. Thank you. So I wanted to ask, you said we could declare anything in the variable, right? How would the system know which variable you're referring to per time? Because you could have two different variables, right? You could have two different values in different variables. So that's the first question. How would it know which one you're referring to? Then secondly, for the assignment thingy, when it's assigning the value on the right to whatever you have on the left, how would, like you said, let x equals x plus 5. So is it that you would have declared x somewhere else before, or how would it be able to compute that? I'm just trying to understand, as in bring it down to my own understanding. How, like x equals x plus 5. So what exactly would be returned?
Okay, that's a very good question, right? So I'm going to start with the first one. So you're asking how would, like, maybe if you create 100 variables, right? How would the system know what value each variable carries per time, right?
Yeah.
So what you should know is I can do let's A to Z, right? I can assign different variables. What you should know is, right, the computer is very smart and is good with numbers and memory, right? So if I were to draw a graphical representation of what happens here, right, is if I say let x equals 5, the computer creates a space in memory, right? In your ROM. I don't want to like deeply go into something, like creates I've forgotten what it's called. It creates a reference, right, in memory and saves this, like it just creates. I don't want to go into the mechanics of what it does, right? But it creates a reference to this x and saves it somewhere. So it knows x has the value of 5. Remember, all these are in binary. But what you should just know is the computer always knows that x is equal to 5. That's why if I try to declare x here again, it's going to throw an error and say, hey, I already have x somewhere. Why are you trying to cannot redeclare block scope variable, right? It's going to tell me I already have x somewhere. I already have x in memory. So what you should know is all these stuff are being saved in memory, right? All these programs, they have, like, it uses the memory of the system, right? I can create 1,000,000 variables as long as they don't clash in in names. It's going to always remember the value, always. So it's saved somewhere in memory. Then to answer your second question, right? So you said I did let x times y, let z equals x times y, right? So remember I said whenever I declare a variable, right? A variable is a container for a value. Wherever I come in my application, even if this gets to 1,000,000 lines of code and I do x, I'm not referring to the letter x anymore. I'm referring to 5, right? So if I do, okay, let me close this. Let me alert x now. I think I'll stop using alert so I can, let me just alert x and save. If I go to my page, let me refresh this. I'm going to see 5 because the computer knows that x is a container for 5. If I change it to y.
Sammy, please, I don't know what is going on. I'm not seeing anything on your...
Exactly. We are not seeing the output.
Oh, seriously. Let me use the web. I thought you were seeing my Zoom is not showing my little pop-up box. Let me use, so sorry. Let me do document.
It doesn't show anything of what code you are writing. You can't see it there.
So sorry. I have a little pop-up modal. I thought everyone was seeing it. Let me just change it.
I thought it was only me, like I was going blind. But
Thanks for
Since I
please. Document like it gave me by ID. Let me see. Display. Okay, so I'm going to use this as an example now. I'll just be changing my variable. Just hold on, please. Let me just get this to work. Okay, I think I have it, but let me just clear this alert now. Let me style it so everyone can see it clearly. Okay, can everyone see the file on my screen now? Let me make it bigger.
Yes.
And that's too much. Okay, so I think I'm just going to display it like this, right? So let me use this. So let me just quickly go over almost questions again before thanks for pointing that out. So I am going to explain what I did later, what I did with this line, right? So basically the system just saves the values of each variable in memory, right? So anytime I come down and say, and just call y, let me change this to y now. So previously I was using alert. I didn't know it wasn't showing, but now I'm using this to get, if you can maybe read this, you see what I'm doing. I get element by ID, then set the value to y. So what you should just focus on is I'm calling y as a variable. So y is not going to show, it's going to show the value of y. So what you should know is whenever you declare a variable, anywhere else in your application, you call that variable, right? Y or X or anything, you're referencing the value, not the identifier. So I can afford to come and say, let z, let me take this back up and I'll comment it. Let z equals x plus y. So when the compiler or when the browser is running this thing, right, it first of all computes what is in this place before it assigns it. It computes x times y. X times y is 5 times 2 is 10, right? So it computes 5 times 2, then assigns it to z. So if I do z, before it even gets here, maybe it has already computed so fast. It has already computed what's it called? 2 times 5 and assigned it to z, then displayed z. So again, just know that it saves x in memory and references the value 5. Then whenever you call x or y or the variable name, it brings out the value. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Sammy. But I just wanted to ask, so is it possible for you to have declared x equals 5 somewhere and then go back and say, let x equals 5 plus 2? Because that was what you did before, and that's what got me confused.
Let x equals 5 plus 2.
Yeah.
Equals 5. I can do x equals 5 plus 2 outrightly here. X equals 5 plus 2 is going to compute it and give me the value of x as 7. So if I change this to x now, you're going to see 7. But why, if I do x equals 5 and come, remember I said, once you declare a variable with a variable name, you cannot redeclare it, right? I cannot come down and say, let x equals something again.
Okay,
so I can
good.
Say,
all right.
Let y equals x plus 2, or I can just actually say, let x equals 5 plus 6. We are going to do this.
That clears it.
Yeah, so we're going to do this a whole lot. Maybe if you're building strong programs, so you're going to need to compute so many things. Yeah, so I can do this, and if I check, x equals 10.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, so let me see. Otman.
Hi, Sam. Sammy. So you said we can use variable var, and we use a constant identifier for different values.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you get if you, let's say, for example, you use a var x equals to 5 times 2, then we go again, var x equals to 5 times 8. How does the program distinguish or differentiate between the two code?
Okay, so good one, nice one, right? So that is one of the reasons it was updated, right? So var x equals 1. I can still come here and do var x equals 2, right? Where is my equal sign? Equals 2. So this is what we're talking about, right? So the problem with var is you can redeclare variable, and this is bad for programming, right? I might accidentally name, say, var user equals maybe Otman or Ngito, then come later and forget that I already declared the user as Ngito and redeclare the user as Omo, right? So this is bad. So if I save this now and check x, who brought Lorem spoon? Okay, we declared x, so x disappeared from memory. Let me see. X var x equals, why is it not showing x? Oh, I use user. We're supposed to display x, right? Just okay, so I was messing up my code somewhere. So, like, for example, right, let me answer your question first. If you declare var x equals in Git2 and come and say var x equals 2, the program will pick the most recent assignment. Remember, it reads your code. This is an instruction line by line. So it saw here, you said x is equals to, is going to pick this one. So the reason it was like updated to let and const, it's so you won't be able to do this because that's bad practice, right? So let x equals to, it's going to throw an error. If I check my console, I'll see an error. So to answer your question, if you declare it, if you use var and declare it 100 times, var is going to, like, it's just going to continue declaring it. Like, let me just do x and write 200 here. It's going to pick 200, but it's bad practice. That's why it was updated, right? So you can do this. The program will pick the most recent value and assign it to x.
Okay, that answers my question. Lastly, how do you get to this page, this console page, please?
So your browser has, like, it's called developer tools. We're going to touch it in JavaScript, right? So I just right click and click on inspect, or let me just use, can you see, let me not assume, can you see this little modal on my browser now?
Yes, I can see them.
So I can maybe go to options in my browser, more tools and developer tools. Can you see this?
Yes.
If I click on it, it's going to open the developer tools, or I can right click on the page and click on inspect. It's going to open up developer tools.
Sammy, please, can you go back?
To where?
Like to the those 3 dots. There is this shortcut extension that, please go proceed. Yeah, go ahead. To that developer tools. Yeah, for that developer tools, there is this shortcut. How do you press that on your keyboard? This on your Apple keyboard. Yeah.
Are you on a Mac?
Yes, I'm on a Mac, please.
It's Option Command I.
Option Command I. Oh, all right, thanks.
Yeah. So let me see if you have any other question. Yeah. Okay, so Otman, I've answered your question, right?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, Shalom.
Thank you.
Shalom, you can go ahead.
Hi, Sammy, please. I kind of came in late. So for what's the question? So do we still need to reference style.css here, or Java works on independently?
Yeah, okay, good question, right? There are different things with different purposes, right? If you want to add, see, I still have my style.css, right? And I styled my font and color, right? So style sheet does a different thing, and JavaScript is going to do a different thing. So you have to reference both of them. So I referenced my JavaScript and my style sheet. So you always have to add, if you want to use external style sheets, you have to add them. And mind you can have multiple 10 CSS files and 10 JavaScript files. As long as you reference them correctly, they are all going to apply.
Sorry, you have it referenced on your index.html.
Yeah.
So can we reference it on the scripts.j? For the first time, I'm kind of confused here. Because if we're using, sorry.
Go ahead.
So if we're writing Java scripts now, we have to use the HTML, or we just go script.js and then maybe introduce like the styling sheets now. Okay,
so I talked about 3 ways or 2 ways to import or use. I'll add JavaScript to your HTML. Right? So I say the first one, you can, in your head tag, use the script tag provided by HTML, right? So the script opening tag and closing tag. If I go here, copy all this I've done now. I'm going to copy everything. I'll remove it so this file doesn't have anything. So this is just an external JavaScript. And come here, I have even commented it out, and paste all those codes, right? It's still going to format it like it's a JavaScript file because it's in the script tag. If I go to my browser, let me see. If I have any error. Okay, I'm going to copy this X and put it below here. Right, if I go to my browser, it will still work the same way, right? The same way as an external JavaScript. So the idea, just the way we had with CSS, right? You can embed JavaScript in your HTML, but it's going to be messy once it starts to get long. Then you can maybe create an external JavaScript file and put in all your codes, not this, and put in all your codes, then import it with a link tag. So, but when you use a link tag, you have to reference it with the source. So see here, I'm referencing it source.js. If you remember, with our link tag or a tag, if I have it in another folder, I can maybe use dots and go to the folder and reference it. But in our case, it's just in our root directory, which is script.js. Is that clear? Is that a little bit clear now?
Yeah, it does make sense. So my question now is, what would be your suggested practice for writing JavaScript? I mean, like if someone wanted to write HTML codes, I get that part for this, but if we're going full on JavaScript now, would you advise to have like an external JavaScript file or page for that?
Yeah, so it's always advised, right? Like to maintain clean code, right? So it's always advised to kind of have files for different stuff. So for example, by looking at this, you should know this file is just HTML, right? We imported CSS and we imported JavaScript, right? So it's always advised to use external files, both CSS and JavaScript. But in some cases, we might get to that. In some cases, you might not have much JavaScript to write, right? So for example, if we had a full-blown website and there's we have index and there's maybe contact or about us, and in the about us page, you only need 5 lines of JavaScript code, right? So it would be ambiguous to just create a file. You can just add it in a script in that same page, but it's always advised to use external if you have too much or too many codes, like too many JavaScript. So imagine we had CSS with 2,000 lines of code, JavaScript with 5,000 lines of code, then HTML with maybe 500 lines of code. Then I outrightly write the style. I come here and write the styles, the CSS here. Then I come here and write. It's going to make this file so messed up and so long. So my convention to make your code look neat and readable, just write them in external files, then import them. Are you there, Sharon?
I'm just breathing in and out. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. But Benny,
Hi, Sammy. Thank you. So my question is just quite similar to what Shalom just asked. And for someone like me, I like writing my my style inside the same HTML like code script, right? Not external. I like the internal. I prefer the internal kind of. And so I know that you have to declare for CSS. You have to declare the style in the head tag in the HTML, right, and the div in the body. Right. So for JavaScript, how do we go about? Because I see that the script tag you declared it in the body, and that's just what's confusing me there. Is there something we have to do in both head and body tags in the HTML, or it's just everything is just done in the body tag? Yeah. Do you understand my question?
That's for JavaScript.
Yes, for JavaScript.
Can you please come again?
Okay, so in the situation where I'm styling everything, I'm doing the internal on this HTML, right? Yeah. I'll go in the head tags, style, then maybe put a selector and whatever, then come to the body tag, use a div tag and all the IDs variables and everything, IDs, yeah, thank you. So for JavaScript, if we want to do it like that, how do I go about it? Like if I want to write it,
if you want to manipulate HTML elements with JavaScript.
With JavaScript, yes, on the same.
We are going to get to that, right? So if you look at this, I already kind of did one. I manipulated this p tag. So I did. If you look at my HTML, I don't have anything in here, right? I just gave it an ID of display. Then in my JavaScript, I said document.get an element by ID of display, then set the inner text to X, right? So we're going to do DOM. It's called DOM manipulation. We're going to get into it maybe later when we kind of are through with the basics, right? But if I got your question correctly, you're asking how you can write JavaScript in the body tag, right?
Yeah, so I see. So my thought was, okay, maybe this script you just type in here should be in the head tag. Then we're going to write all every other thing in the body tag, like
okay. Let me explain
the body tag. Yeah.
If you saw a while ago, I put it in the head tag, right? But my code did not work.
Okay.
Let me copy this. Let me bring this my document.write. There's nothing in this file now, and I paste all those codes in here. Ideally, they are supposed to work, but if I go to my browser, there's nothing on my page and it throws an error. And so the reason is, I told you like maybe first week of HTML, right, that the browser reads this stuff from top to bottom. In fact, every program, even JavaScript, reads it from top to bottom, right? So what I did here, right, I put the head tag or the script tag in the head tag, and I said documents.get element by ID display. The browser has not loaded this yet. It doesn't know what display is. So what you should know, right, why writing script, why it's always advised, by convention, it's always advised to keep script tags below, right? So the browser has not loaded this yet. It doesn't know what ID display is. But see, if I take this, cut it, and put it below the display or just at the end of the body tag and save, you're going to see it's going to display. So why you can add JavaScript directly on the head tag as long as it's not manipulating your maybe HTML content, maybe with an ID or a class. But if it is, you have to bring it below. So just always know that the browser reads this stuff from top to bottom. So it's always going to read the first line first. Does that help?
Yes, kind of. I'll watch the video again and read more.
So it's going to be clear, don't worry. Okay, so I think we can go ahead now. Okay, so that's... So if you haven't gone through this earlier, maybe all this whole stuff might be a little bit fuzzy, but I'm just going to try reiterate over again, right? If I go to arithmetic assignments and data types, right? So I said variables are, and I guess everyone is comfortable with variables, right? So variables are containers for storing data. It can be anything. It can be the names of the whole, like let me bring back our work. I'll do this. Cut this out. Paste this here. Right. So when we get to like further data types, you're going to see that I can even make a variable, like let me say a list of all the core 3 developers, right? I can do Shalom. I can do so these are just data types. We'll get to that, right? So I'm just saying variables. You can create anything in variables, right? So let me do Sammy. I don't know if arrays will display properly on the web page. Yeah, it's displayed, but basically variables are just containers to store data. So maybe when we start building or when we start doing complex stuff, we're going to see that we can save different types of data types, right? You can save an object, color of a car, color of you can save a whole lot of stuff as a variable. It will just create a reference to your value. So in a nutshell, variable is just a container for storing data. And when we keep on using it, you're going to see and understand it more. So let const is a constant, and let is just like the modern way to declare a variable. But I'm still going to show us later on some other key differences between let const and var, which I don't want to confuse anyone now, right? So I'm going to go to arithmetic. Let me see. Let's talk about data types. I'll come back to arithmetic, right? So I listed out some data types, right? So the concept of data types. In programming, data types is an important concept, right? To be able to operate on variables, it is important we know something about the type. Without data type, a computer cannot safely solve this, okay? So let's just take this example. Does it make any sense to add Volvo to 16? Will it produce an error or will it produce a result? So with this now, let me just ask a question. Can someone tell me what will be the output? If you know, if you don't know, we can just test it out, right? Let's X. So this is where data types or the importance of data types comes in, right? Because the computer doesn't, like I said, when we're handling CLI, command line interface, the computer doesn't know anything, right? So what you tell it, if it has it in its function, it's going to give it to you. If there's an error, it's going to throw an error, right? So let X equals 16 plus Volvo. So I'm just going to display this on the page, so you're going to see the results. Can you see? It's concatenated. If you know the meaning of concatenation, it's going to add both 16, that is a number, and Volvo, that is a string. It's just going to join both of them together and convert it to a string. But in actual sense, 16 is a number, right? Data type number. Johnson or Volvo is a string, right? So data type just helps you to kind of maybe sometimes tell the computer that, hey, this is a number, I want it to remain a number, and this is a string, I want it to remain a string. Let's just go for, so we're going to see how to manipulate those, right? Just going to treat the example as, so see what it's going to convert. It's going to convert 16 to a string and concatenate both of them. So when adding a number to it and a string, JavaScript will treat the number as a string, like we've just seen, right? It's going to add both of them. If I check the type of this stuff, it's a string. So these are just kind of the importance of number, right? So if you turn it like this, JavaScript expression from left to right. Let me see. Okay, let me use this example now. So let X equals 16 plus 4 Volvo, right? So this is like, so this just kind of explains more on the question, or more action I was explaining all those X plus stuff, right? So before JavaScript, it evaluates statements from left to right, right? So before it comes to maybe assigning to X, it computes everything here first, right? So this would be 16 plus 4. It's going to calculate 16 plus 4 because they are both numbers and add it to Volvo. So they're just trying to help us understand the importance of data types, right? So data types numbers always work with numbers, right? But strings don't normally work well with numbers. So if you understand data types, you're going to understand how to control all this in your code. So for example, now let's say you're building a software and you want to say, let's say maybe, for example, like everything you see maybe on the your favorite website or applications were written in code, right? So maybe you want to see today's date, 7th of March, and you don't, as the programmer, you don't outrightly outline the data type as a date, right? It's going to mess up. It's just going to mess up how you're going to display. We're going to see all those later, right? So let's Volvo is still the same thing, just turning. So in the example, JavaScript treats 16 and 4 as numbers until it reaches Volvo. In the second example, since the first operand is a string, all operands are treated as strings. So these are just kind of to show you that there are different data types, right? There are numbers and there are strings. So strings are text values in quotes, and numbers can be written plain as numbers, but you can convert numbers to strings, and I don't think you can convert a string to a number as long as it's not a number. So JavaScript types are dynamic, right? So let x is undefined, x is equals 5. Now x is a number, x is a string. So this is, let me explain this to you right now. So JavaScript is the same way we have HTML that is a merciful language, right? So JavaScript is kind of a merciful programming language, right? It's called dynamic. They are dynamic programming languages. Other languages like Java might not allow you to do this. So if I copy this now, I'm going to show you something. Paste this. We are still talking about variables, sorry. So what we do, we declared x, right? This is possible in JavaScript. So it's just going to be undefined. We've not given it a value. Then we said let x equals 5. Now x, the type of x, data type is a number. Then we came down here and said let x equals John, a string. If I save this, it's still going to be John. But in some strong or strict programming language, once you declare a variable as a number, you can't change it to a string. So we won't want to go into that, but just know that JavaScript types are dynamic. I can change the data type of a variable from a number to a string and vice versa, right? Okay, so JavaScript strings are written in quotes. So you can use both double quotes and single quotes. I'm just trying to look for other data types, right? So we've talked about strings, right? So basically strings is the easiest to kind of understand and is the most used, right? So strings are text in quotes. The numbers are just numbers written outrightly, right? So this is an example of a number variable. Let me take this off. So I guess we all know these are comments, right? We use comments in both HTML and CSS. So these are numbers. Numbers are written outrightly. Then strings are in double quotes. And I wanted to go into another data type, right? Booleans, right? So I listed them out earlier. So we have Booleans, and these are two very important values in programming. Like they are everywhere, right? They are everywhere. So JavaScript Booleans, right? So Booleans can only have two values, true or false. So when we get to conditionals, we'll see the use of Booleans, right? So for example, x equals 5, right? Y equals 5, Z equals 6. What this just says is x equal, like, so I said earlier that the single equal to is an assignment operator in algebra. So this might be equal to, right? But in JavaScript, the equal to is the double equal to sign. I hope everyone understands this, right? So equal to is assigning a value to a variable. Then equal to is what you know as the equal sign, right? So Booleans I just use in programming to kind of check truth or falsity, right? So if this is true, it's true. If this is false, it's false. And they are written without quotes. So if I say x equals true, and save, it's going to be true. X equals false. They are written without quotes. If you put them in quotes, it's no longer a Boolean value, right? Then I can just, let me see. Let me use this example now, right? Copy, paste. Rather than have this here, I can copy this X and put it in our page. Let me see if it will show. Yeah, so these are just truthy and falsy values, right? They are Boolean data types. when we start using them, we're going to understand what I just did basically, right? I just asked, is X equals to Y? So what it just does, right? See, X, the value of X is 5. The value of Y is 5. So I'm just saying, is the value of X equals to Y? And the answer is true. So JavaScript or the compiler just calculates it and see, 5 and 5 are the same and they are numbers. So it returns true. So we're going to see, I guess, everyone here has used truthy values or Boolean values in Salesforce, right? So we have Boolean data types in JavaScript. You can use true or false, and we're going to use it very well we need to understand it in, what's it called? Conditionals, right? So they are arrays. So the stuff I used earlier on were arrays. So I said variables are like containers to store data, right? You can store more, like we're going to get into complex, or you can store more complex data, right? So you can say cars, maybe you want to build a software that talks about cars. You can just say var cars and give it like all the names of possible cars you want, and it's going to just store it in the cars variable. We're going to talk about how to access each of them later, but what you should know is you're not limited to, cars. You're not limited to having just X or Y or numbers in a variable. You can use arrays. There are different data types, right? That's what we're going to. You can use arrays. You can use objects to depict to save values, okay? So these are objects now. For example, when we get into this, it's going to be more fun, right? So const person. So I can decide to, rather than say, okay, let me give you a typical example of where all these data types help, right? Rather than I say, let's name equals Sammy. What else does it declare there? Last name. So let's first name equals Sammy. Let's last name. I'm going to put my surname. Then what about age? Let's age. I'm going to put age. Age is a number. Then eye color, right? I'm just trying to show you something. Eye color equals brown. So for example now, so a typical way, if you just want to use, these are just trying to let you, I kind of tell you the importance of different data types, right? So if it's only strings and numbers, so this is a typical way you want to save qualities of one person, right? But what if we have 300 students? You're going to do let Sammy's first name, let Sammy's last name, and it's not effective, right? So you can just use the objects. We call this object, right? So let person, first name, John, last name, Doe, age 50, eye color blue. I can access this anywhere in my program later. And please don't worry about the syntax if you don't understand this. We're going to go into that later. I can access all of this later in my program. Like I can access the person's, maybe let's say this is a user. We are building a software. This is a user. We're going to have the person's first name, last name, age, address, password. We're going to get into all those and start building a little bit more complex programs, right? But this is a different data type. It's called objects. Let me see if I can display this on the HTML. Let me see. Yeah, so it's not going to be displayed. This one is used for like much more complex programming, right? So there are different data types, right? And you can know the data type you're working with the type of operator. There's undefined. So a value cannot have a variable cannot have a value, right? So I can do let X and just close the statement. If I display X now, I think it should be undefined or no, yeah. So undefined means nothing in JavaScript, right? So you've not assigned a value. Yeah, so basically you've not assigned a value. In JavaScript, a variable without a value has the value undefined, right? So the type is also undefined. So let car, if you just declare, and we can do this a whole lot of times in our application, right? I can declare 10 variables, right? Let X, Y, Z. Okay, I've declared X already, sorry. Let A, B, C, D, and just close it, right? I can use all these variables later in my application, but for now, they are all undefined. So this is another type of data, right? It's undefined. It means nothing. Yeah, okay. So empty values. Yeah, so you can also do this, right? The same way we can assign string value, you can also give empty value values. So let x equals nothing. If I go, it's going to be an empty string. So those are just stuff you can play around with, right? Then I am just going to go to and yeah, functions. Let me go to strings and talk more on strings. So it will be that with length, length, variables, and strings today, right? So I've already talked a whole lot about strings and the variable strings. So let's take question Doe. You can use single or double quotes, right? So single quotes, double quotes is still going to work. You can use single quotes inside the string as long as they don't match. So for example, if I want to write something like this, let answer 1. It's a rainy day. If you notice, I have a single quote here inside the double quotes. If I save this, let me change this to my X variable, it's going to work fine, right? But if you put, let's say, your variable is all single quotes, and you try to use a single quote inside a single quote, what it's going to do, right? JavaScript is going to think you ended. Sorry, let me zoom this a little bit. So what is going to do, right? So JavaScript is going to think you ended your statement here, and all this is going to throw an error. It's not even going to show anything because it's going to throw an error in the console. So you just have to be careful. If you want to use single quotes inside the sentence, you use double quotes outside. So JavaScript strings can be single or double quotes, but you just have to be careful with using them. Okay, so string length. So I won't want to go into methods, right? So there are a whole lot of things you can do with all these data types. All of them has different methods you can play with. For example, I can find the length of a string. If I do this, text length, and I output length, it's going to tell me the length of the whole alphabet, right? So if you see, it said let text equals A to Z. Then length of the text equals text.length. We are going to get into this later. These are called methods. I won't want to touch them now. So I won't worry about that. So basically, so if I go into these are string methods now, string methods. So basically, right, so if this is just like a major introduction, and you just have to understand the concepts of variables and data types. And the two data types I want you to understand right now are strings and numbers, right? So if you have any questions around variables and data types, you can just raise up your hands. Let me see if I missed something. I don't want to go into methods and other complex stuff with arithmetic calculations now. But basically, what you should know, like if you've we've done the basic introduction to JavaScript as a programming language. I've not even used JavaScript like that much on maybe a web page, like maybe created a complete web page and use JavaScript to manipulate it. We're just still trying to learn the syntax and how it all works, right? So if you have any question as to how maybe variables are declared, what are strings, what are numbers, you can just raise up your hand. Let me see. Let's take those before we go. Olake.
Yeah, hello. Good evening, sir. When you were, can you hear me?
If you can speak up, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's better now.
Yeah, when you were doing the addition of the value, the strings and the numbers, you said something that the JavaScript starts to take it from the right to the left. I noticed that when you did the addition of the string and the numbers, there was a point where he added the numbers, then did a concatenation. You got Volvo 20 or 20 Volvo. But when he started from the string, he didn't add the numbers. He just joined everything together. Can you explain that?
Okay, so let me try to replicate what you said. It's called...
There was a place where there was, it had Volvo plus 16 plus 4. Instead of adding the 16 and the 4, you just put it at Volvo 16, 4.
Let me see, let's x equals 16 plus 4 Volvo. 20 Volvo, right? Then if I switch this to Volvo plus Volvo plus 16 plus 4, like this, right?
Yes.
It's going to say Volvo 164, right?
Yes.
So, excuse me, please. So here's what happened, right? So if it's just a way the compiler kind of reads all this stuff, right? So let me go back to that content. So you're going to see it from here. Where did I go to? Yeah, it's data types. So if it starts with a string, right? JavaScript is going to convert every other thing as a string and assume they are all strings and just concatenate them. But if it starts with a number, it's going to compute the number first, and it's going to kind of compute the number first. Then whenever it sees a string, it converts everything as a string. So for this example, right, 16 plus 4, it's seen number so far. It adds 16 plus 4. Then when it gets to Volvo is a data type of string. It converts everything to string. So this is just one of the ways JavaScript compiler misbehaves, right? So JavaScript evaluates expressions from left to right. Different sequences can produce different results, right? So this is what we tried. It produced 20 Volvo. Then if you do this, it will produce Volvo 164. It won't add the 16 and 4. So see the expansion. The second example, since the first operand is a string, that is where the data type comes in. Like this data type is a string. All operands are treated as string. So this is just one of the funny things JavaScript does, right? So if the first operator, operand, or whatever the value of the first stuff here is a string, converts everything else to a string. But if it starts with a number, it's going to add the number data types and concatenate it later on. So this is just like a compiler stuff, and you just have to, like they said, different sequences can produce different results.
So I guess there are so many other funnies about the JavaScript stuff that we will have to take into.
Yeah, so it's just in the case of strings and number coercions, right? It handles a whole lot of things differently. Like let me show you one, right? If I say let x equals 2, these are just some funny stuff that you maybe, if you're not writing something serious now, you won't even experience them or know about them. If I do x equals y and save, it's going to show false, right? But in actual sense, you think true is true, but this is a data type of string and this is a data type of Boolean, right? So there are just some funny stuff that coercive. There are some funny coercive stuff that JavaScript does that you just have to be familiar with when writing your program. So just know, once it sees a string as the first operand, it converts everything to a string and just concatenates all of them. But in real sense, other programming language will not allow you to do this, right? They won't allow you to do this. Except you outrightly tell them to, maybe I think in Salesforce, I was trying to solve an issue in the project, right? I had to concatenate, like, let's say Volvo. Yeah, I think I was concatenating it. I had to do, I think in Salesforce it's and something, you put a space, then concatenate the other ones. So in JavaScript, you can do this and get away with it, but in other programming languages, you to throw an error till you do it correctly. Are you there, Ola?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Okay, Dara.
Okay, hi, Sammy. The parts where you were talking about attributes of human being, I noticed you started with let, then later switched to const. I don't understand that part. How do you know when to use let and when to use const?
Okay. So I practically copied and pasted. So they used const. You can use let to declare a person, object, to an array. But the thing is, I said it earlier, if I use const to declare this X now, remember, just because we are just doing an introductory lesson, I haven't gone beyond 5 or 7 lines of code, right? So if I use const to declare this X, I cannot ever change this value X unless I delete this program. Maybe when I host it, or unless I bring it back and like kind of delete, like for the life cycle of this program. Remember, this file is program. For the life cycle of this program, I cannot change X. So if I try to say X No, let me do it above my document. It's still going to throw an error. Let me do x equals 1. And see, nothing is actually displaying, but I'm going to see an error in my console. This is where the error is coming from. Okay, now I can see the error. You can see my console, right?
Yes.
So assignment to constant variable, right? So I cannot, this is just like permanent. So I think the first example, it's because let's say you're creating a mass, a school management system or a mass application. A reasonable thing to put as the constant is pi. We know pi is constant, right? So pi is 3.4. So maybe if your code is 100 lines, then maybe wherever I want to say you want to grade an assignment, let's say you maybe divide the person's solution by pi or something. So all you have to do is to be calling pi. Pi is always 3.4. So that's how you use constants. You can use constant, let's say constant company name. You always know the company name is Black Force, except maybe they will change the company name later. Black Force. Then you continue using company name in your code. But other variables declared with let, you can change later in your code.
So in JavaScript, we use more of let than const.
It also depends, right? You can decide to use const if you know the variable is not going to change. But yeah, ideally you should use more of let than const.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Omobi.
Hi, Samuel. I have a question. So there was a time that you displayed an example of two variables. You said let x be at 5, let x equals 5. I'll just read it out that way. And you also said let x equals June. However, when it displayed on the HTML browser, it was only June that got displayed. So I was wondering, is there a rule like that the string overrides the number variable?
Yeah, so it's called, I think I see have it open in this page. JavaScript dynamic types, right? So this is what we're talking about, x equals 5, x equals John, right?
Yes, I did use it. Yeah, you used it as an example, yeah.
Yeah, so this is where I copied it from actually. So what this means, like JavaScript has dynamic types. This means that the same variable can be used to hold different data types. So on this line, x is declared as a number 5. Then they now declared x at John. So what's just trying to tell you that the JavaScript programming language allows dynamism, right? So in other programming language, right, let's say Java, I have to declare, okay, let me not go faster than my shadow, right? In Java, I have to kind of actually declare integer x equals 5. I cannot save, it's throwing an error because this is not Java. I cannot ever save a string inside this value x, ever. That's for Java. But what it's trying to tell you that JavaScript is dynamic, or you can say merciful. I can save x as 5 and change it to a string and change it to a function. Okay, so I can do this and change the data type of x, of what x is holding to John. Okay, is that clear, Mobi?
Yeah, but it ignored the number, right? And it displayed only the string as answer.
Yeah, overriding this. You have it has deleted this out of memory. So the new value of x is John.
Okay, so when we have two variables like this, then we know that the number will be overridden.
Yeah, it mustn't necessarily be the number. If it was John here and 5 here, 5 will overwrite John.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So you can always play. I wanted, because we are working with our VS Code, right? You can always play with all this stuff directly on your browser. If you click on Try It Yourself, it will give you a code editor and a browser instance to play with. So I can directly, easily come here. Let me just change this to John from here. Change this to John and change this to 5. Right, so if I save, if I run, it's going to change to 5. So just know that JavaScript just is dynamic, right? You can assign different data types to a particular variable.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, Otman.
Hi, Sammy. So my question is, does JavaScript understand arrangements of values? For example, let's say you say value, you've declared your variables x equals to value like 5 plus 5.
Yeah.
Then you use a string, then you go again plus 2. Will JavaScript concatenate those values, or will it just declare it as 8, string, and 5?
No, it concatenates them as long as there's a string in between them.
Do you understand the arrangement of the values?
Yeah, you said 5. Let's use 5 plus 2, right?
Yes, 5 plus 2.
Volvo.
String, yeah. Plus 5.
It's going to add this to 5, and this is going to the answer is going to be 7 Volvo 5.
Oh, okay.
So as long as this, sorry, go ahead.
So it didn't really have the numbers together in total.
No, so as long as whenever it's just one of the funny stuff. I won't want to show you all the funny stuff about JavaScript, right? So it's just one of the funny stuff about JavaScript. As long as whenever it meets a string, it concatenates everything else. It doesn't like treat any number. But if I had a number here, right, it's going to add everything together. Right. But whenever it meets a string, it coerces every other thing to a string and joins them together. Reason being, there's a cost to everything, right? So it allows this dynamic type. So because it allows some things, it's going to mess up in some ways, and they're just going to try to cover it up. So in other strongly typed programming language, you cannot do this. You cannot assign X to 5, and you cannot even try to combine a string and a number outrightly without coercing it forcefully, right? So because JavaScript allows some things, it behaves funny in some way. So I won't want to show you all, but just know whenever it meets a string, it just concatenates everything together.
Okay, so my last question is, which one is the most prevalent programming language in a developer community?
Like that's
which of the programming language is more prevalent? Do they really use on their projects? I understand most of those programming language, they are kind of interwoven, but which one is the most prevalent, like they use most?
That's a very difficult question to answer, right? Because every programming language is king, every programming language is important in their different domains. For example, no programming language can compare JavaScript when it comes to websites or browsers. Python has its own domain, data science, machine learning, Java, enterprise applications, just like Salesforce and Apex. So this is a very there are charts, there are kind of different stuff that gives answer, but to me, it's by importance, right? So there are Java developers, there are Python developers. I think basically what you want to ask is, what do you want to do first? That's what you want to ask, because programming languages are used for different things, and you cannot carry. So if you can see here, there's R, there's C#, there's R. C# is also used for web dev. There's R. You cannot compare R and JavaScript in building websites, right? So these are just other scripts. So I think the question you ask first of all is, what do you want to do? Then what language is best for what you want to do? So if you're asking for a 1 to 100 rank of top 100 programming languages, I might not be able to answer that question honestly, because they all perform in their domain. So that's just how I'm going to answer it.
Oh, because the main reason why I'm asking this question is with regards to the reason why I am doing this program.
Okay.
The sole reason is for me to be able to secure a job in few weeks or months. So okay. Now you're letting me understand that there are several programming languages that I might need, and going with this JavaScript itself, it will take a month before I can have a hold of it. So I'm just thinking, okay.
So if you're in this program, we've already selected because this is a Salesforce developer part, right? We've already selected the domain specific languages you're going to learn, right? JavaScript, Apex, Java, right? So it's still the same thing, right? You want to learn Salesforce development, you're going to learn languages that are used to work with Salesforce. So if you had maybe picked in another training, say you want to learn machine learning, they are not going to teach you Apex, or you're not going to need to learn Apex. You're going to learn Python, R, and some other stuff. So just see it like that. Different different professions, I'm not call them professions. Different domains have languages that are used for them, right? So for here, you're going to learn, because you're going to be dealing with the web, you learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then Apex and Java.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Omo?
Okay, so if I really want the example of the Volvo and the numbers. So if I really want my outputs to be Volvo and then really add up 16 and 20, then how do we go about that? At the back of it, as in the addition should come behind the what's it called, alphabet, or the value. How do we go about that?
So this is a good question, right? So this is where you have to be conversant with this string coercion and data types, right? So you're saying if you actually want in your code to read Volvo, then 5 + 2, which is 7. So Volvo 7, right? Yeah. You can concatenate two variables, right? So let x equals Volvo, then let y equals maybe 5 + 2, or you can just automatically write 7. Then let z equals x + y. If I output z now, let me change this to z. If I output z, I'm going to see what you're asking, Volvo 7, okay? So he added the two, someone drawing on the screen? So he added the two, what's it called, values, then concatenated it. So you can do that by actually adding both signs.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so Madashiro.
Yeah, hi, Sammy.
Hello.
Sammy, so my question is, so you mentioned all the technologies that we will need to work as a Salesforce developer. Yeah. And the last one you mentioned was Java. Okay. And from my knowledge, I know Java is much more technical than JavaScript. Okay. So how come this is not stated explicitly in one of the things that we'll learn? And yeah, so if it's not stated explicitly, does it mean we are just going to scratch the surface? Yeah.
Okay, so let me correct myself, right? So you're going to learn Apex majorly, and Apex is a Salesforce language that was built off it's kind of, let me not say the subset of Java. It was inspired by Java, so Apex is closely similar to Java. So by saying you learn Java, you learn Apex, then learn Java. In fact, it's Apex you're going to learn majorly. I don't have full information yet if we're going to dive into Java as a full course, but I know what we're going to do, or what is going to be taught fully, is Apex, and Apex is similar or closely alike to Java. So you can just say maybe Java and Apex, but we'll still get to that ahead, maybe later.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I think let me see. Okay, so that was the last time. So yeah, so basically, right, again, whatever we're going to be doing, or 80% of whatever we're going to be doing, we are going to be using or declaring variables most of the time, and we're going to be using these keywords. Let me see if I can remember. I can see them here again. Sorry, let me look for those keywords. So we're going to be using, in fact, we're majorly going to be declaring variables and keywords. Then we're going to be using strings and numbers as data types. So if you can, I want everyone to just maybe play around from this. I think we shared this in the class. just play around from this JavaScript home to maybe data types, right? So just declare variables. You can, I don't want to show you. You can just use this try it yourself button to play around with it, right? So I don't want to go to the developer console, but if you can use the developer console, you can use it to play around with variables, but I don't want to like kind of really go too far now, but just use this try it yourself to play around with the variables, then just do some stuff with different data types. You're going to receive errors and just play around with, get comfortable with variables because we're going to be doing a whole lot with variables moving forward. Okay. So yeah, I think that's all. We've exhausted our time. We're going to continue tomorrow with other important stuff. But again, I'll just kind of breeze through this stuff maybe when we come tomorrow. But please just get comfortable with variables and syntax of JavaScript, right? For now, we've only just learned how to declare variables. There are still functions, there are still objects and other stuff, but just play around with variables and we'll see tomorrow. Okay? So thanks, everyone. I think we're done for today. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Sammy.
Bye. Thanks, Sammy.
Thanks, Sammy.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.